Welcome back. The appointment of an inter-ministerial committee by President Cyril Ramaphosa to probe allegations of corruption in the procurement of personal protective equipment, or PPE, during COVID-19 has come in for criticism in some quarters. The EFF is among the latest to reject the move, likening it to a fox investigating why the chickens are missing. The committee will be chaired by Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola. Also, it consists of 5 other cabinet ministers, including the cooperative governance, police and finance ministers. To discuss this further is legal expert advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi. A very good evening to you and thank you so much for speaking to us. What are your thoughts around this appointment? Do you support the decision?
No, I don't. I don't support the decision. But let me preface that by pointing out that the levels of corruption in this country are unacceptably high. They are also distressingly deep. And so it is understandable that there will be among some members of cabinet to do something about corruption. But the problem specifically with this cabinet committee is twofold. Firstly, it has no legal basis for its establishment. There is no law in this country that allows members of cabinet to effectively investigate themselves. But there is also another problem, that perception that the current independent corruption-fighting bodies, SIU, NPA, Public Protector, are somehow inadequate and they should be subjected to some sort of cabinet coordination, which itself is constitutionally objectionable. Might I remind the viewers of a little bit of history? Many years ago, the ANC government decided to strip the scorpions of the independents. That case went to the Constitutional Court. They replaced them with what we today know as the hawks. One of the features of the legislation that they put up in relation to the hawks contained a cabinet coordinating committee to whom the hawks had to report specific cases. That aspect of a cabinet coordinating committee was rejected roundly by the Constitutional Court as inimical to the independence of the hawks. The same applies here. The idea of a cabinet subcommittee coordinating work of independent bodies is inimical to the Constitution, particularly because it creates the perception of interference with the work of independent bodies. So I do not support. I think it is misadvised, and I think it is unfortunate.
Now, you mentioned the fact that they have no legal basis. There have been different commissions of inquiry in the past, some having judicial powers and others not. But I think the assumption has been, or the inference, depending on from which prism you look at it, is that they function almost like courts. What is the true purpose of such committees or commissions, and what should it be if you talk about legal basis?
This particular cabinet subcommittee has undergone some change. The first statement that was issued by President Ramaphosa was that they would specifically deal with, those were the terms, they would deal with COVID-19 related corruption. That is obviously manifestly wrong because cabinet has no power in law to deal with COVID corruption. If there is corruption, it must go to the SIU. The president knows that. There was a later statement issued, which was much longer, which then sort of sought to sanitize the earlier version, which now suggested that this new committee would coordinate of the SIU. Now, on either version, whether the purpose is to deal with corruption or to coordinate the work of independent anti-corruption bodies, it remains illegal. But it serves no useful purpose in reality. It is not as if cabinet cannot do anything about corruption. There is no problem in this country of inadequacy of structures. We have enough. We have the SABC Commercial Crimes Unit, we have the SIU, we have the Public Protector, we have the National Prosecuting Authority. So we have enough. We don't have a problem of inadequacy. The problem we have is a problem perhaps of misalignment. And hence, a useful suggestion that has been made is that if cabinet wants to do something meaningful about the distressingly high levels of corruption in this country, it should be looking at ensuring that there is alignment in the bodies that are fighting corruption. So one suggestion I had yesterday was that perhaps we should be moving towards a single anti-corruption agency, which will have the power to investigate, the power to charge, the power to prosecute, and the power to arrest. But in the same chain, at the moment, what happens is that the SIU investigates a case. It then gives that file to the NPA, and then it is up to the NPA what to do with it. I think in 2018, there was an announcement that there was something like 800 cases of corruption investigated by the SIU, given to the NPA, which had not been prosecuted. So we have no shortage in this country of institutions. We probably have a shortage of the misalignment, perhaps underfunding, perhaps lack of skills of those institutions. But the last thing we need is a cabinet committee. So
as you mentioned, there are those other law enforcement agencies that are also charged with looking at corruption. But I also want to talk about the role of cabinet. It is tasked with oversight. Are all of these not a duplication or waste of resources?
Yes, this specific cabinet committee is a duplication. It is a waste of resources. But at the same time, it is dangerous because it creates the impression in the public's mind that there is a problem with the NPA. We don't have a problem with the NPA. The NPA is perfectly legally positioned. We don't have a problem with the SIU. It's perfectly legally positioned. And the people institutions are people of stature and people of integrity. And if cabinet wants to do anything, it can support the work of the SIU, it can support the work of the NPA. What it should not be doing is to meddle, which is what it is currently doing.
From the point of view of law, so if you were to establish such an entity, please just take us through this distinct difference versus adversarial versus inquisitorial.
Yeah, concept of adversarial and inquisitorial is an interesting one. The body, for instance, that you might say, takes an inquisitorial approach rather than an adversarial approach is a body like the public protector. Function combines an administrative function with an investigative function, and then sometimes with an adjudicative function, because once she's identified, investigated a case, she's also entitled to take remedial action, which then becomes binding. So the idea that has been proposed is that if you want to tackle the distressing levels of corruption in South Africa that are getting worse and that have been highlighted by the corruption of government around COVID, perhaps the only way is to channel that anxiety into better institution, not dismantling the current institutions, but so the solution that has been suggested is perhaps there should be a single chain in the fight against corruption, a single dedicated line, which has the power of arrest, the power of investigation, the power of charging, and the power of prosecution. So you do not have a break in this chain where someone has been arrested but cannot be prosecuted because the arrest was premature, or someone has been charged but carry on until the conviction stage because another prosecutor in the chain has taken the view that the charge itself was misconceived. So it's about building that chain in the criminal justice system so that at the very outset, because most afraid of is the likelihood of being detected and arrested, not so much the length of the sentences, because they all believe that they won't be arrested and they won't be detected. And we also need it to be truly independent from the government. And that is why this cabinet subcommittee is such a bad idea, because it creates the impression that members of cabinet, and the truth is that the allegations around COVID center around senior political figures. If it appears that they are now investigating themselves, the public will lose faith in our ability to tackle corruption. So the idea of a single anti-corruption body seems to be an attractive one because it breaks the misalignment within the criminal justice system.
Just a quick one. There is what some have suggested is the role that these commissions play, that of not only educating the public but also transparency. Now, the accusation around this committee has been it's more of a PR exercise, but would you agree that there is a need for that, to take the public along with us? We've seen the State Capture Commission play that sort of, or that role, sort of, but how crucial is it?
No, it's crucial that any process that is designed should be a transparent process. But the reality is that the NPA is a transparent body. The SIU is a transparent body. And I heard somewhere that one of the things they want to do is to publish the list of the suppliers. The requirement to publish the list of the suppliers already exists in the Public Finance Management Act. It is the function of the National Treasury. You can go to the website of the National Treasury today. You will find a list of government suppliers. It's already law. So there is no need to establish a cabinet subcommittee in order to publish a list of suppliers. And that's why this is a total diversion to what the country should be doing in order to fight corruption. So I agree with you that the principle of transparency is important, but it is already part and parcel of the legal infrastructure of the country. And that power is Minister Tito Mbowene's power. He can simply be instructed by the president to publish the list of the suppliers. He already has a legal duty to do so right now. So the idea that you need a cabinet subcommittee to make public a list of suppliers is also a misconceived idea. And the criminal justice system already functions in a transparent way. And that's because the Constitution says that criminal investigations and criminal prosecutions must be public. Everyone who is arrested is entitled to have a public trial. But we may not know how the investigation takes place because, as a matter of necessity, sometimes the police must hide from us what they're investigating, because if they tell us, we will hide the evidence that will implicate us.
Thank you so much. Certainly a lot to think about. Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, legal expert on the ministerial committee that's been established to probe COVID-19 related allegations of corruption. Let's take a look at your weather. We'll return shortly.